demonstration on the symmetry constraints and also the mirror tool inside the sketching environment of CATIA. So I'm going to just quickly put out a profile, something fairly complicated that's a mirrored image, at least down one axis, that you probably don't want to have to recreate when you're modeling. And the hope is that it will remain, the design intent at least is that it will remain symmetric. So I'm working here, I'm actually working with axis systems. Normally my intro classes I work with the default reference planes, but for the most part it's very similar. So I'm going to create a coincident constraint there and just modify some of this just to get it back looking somewhat normal. Now, I'm not going to worry about dimensional constraints and any other too many dimensional constraints. I'll put in enough here to make it green, because green is my favorite color. I want this to be a diameter. So notice when I'm placing my radius dimension, I can right click and make it a diameter. And I'm just making up my design as I go here. So, and the last thing is from here to here. So we'll call that my design. So let's assume that I've got, this is one half of my model and I want the other half just like it. So you can resketch it. If I were to sketch this whole thing, I would have one line entity here and one full arc here, but I'm going to try this a little bit of a different approach and use the mirror tool. So the mirror tool is on the operations toolbar. Let me verify that. Yes, it's on the operations toolbar. It's a tool called mirror, and don't get that confused with symmetry. Mirror will create a mirrored image, whereas symmetry will just do a reverse image of what you currently have, flip it over in other words. So I want to do mirror. So the way I like to do it, and this is the way I execute, is I will pre-select the entities I'd like to mirror. So I'm using the control key here. I'm holding down the entities I'd like to mirror. And then after I get those selected, release the control key, then I can select the mirror tool and then the axis of symmetry. So again, notice pre-select, mirror tool, then axis of symmetry. And when it throws it in, it does throw in symmetry constraints. And what's being made symmetric here are these lines across the axis of symmetry. Now you can manually create these as well. As an example, let's say I put in a rectangle here, and I wanted these outer edges of my rectangle to be symmetrical around my horizontal axis. Using the control key, it's a pre-selection process. The two entities 1 and 2 and the axis of symmetry 3. So hold down the control key 1 and 2, axis of symmetry is 3, and then put in my symmetry constraint. Notice it's still white, and that's because I have this one linear kind of degree of freedom going on here. So do whatever that takes to meet design intent and lock that down. That is not what I wanted. Had something pre-selected there, but that's okay. I'll take it. I'll make it simple. Make it from here. Now, one thing I don't like about this symmetry approach is just something to think about as far as when it comes to the solid model and topological elements. So I do have a line here and another line here, and with a point between the two. I have an arc here and another arc here with a point between the two. Maybe they're lining up and they're coming tangent to each other. I hope so, and I'm sure they are if I centered up the center of the arc at the origin and I made it nice and symmetric. So I'm sure that's working fine. But this will create an extra little topological edge out in your model. It's usually not a big deal, but one thing you might want to consider, even after you do the symmetry tool, is taking out the arcs and putting in one big arc. Now this isn't always necessary. This is just a little side thing you might want to consider. Use your favorite arc tool and whichever one you feel the most comfortable with. There we go. Now that did not fully constrain, and I need to make sure leave this, you know, you can erase these two lines and draw a full line, but I want to show you what I mean by a little extra topological edge there. So I want to turn this into a pad. Make sure it goes in the current body. So there's a pad, and I'm going to display with edges shown. Now that's, see the little topological edge, and that just means topology, the CAD topology. This is a face and this is a face, as opposed to everything being one face. It's not a big deal. It just depends on best practices. Now, by me creating the full arc, I don't have a topological edge here, but it would have been if I hadn't replaced those arcs. But I think hopefully that's helpful for you.